Everybody, this is Tuesday Morning Grind, episode number 33. Today's a special episode because this is our 5th year anniversary. So with us, we have Ryan McGowan, who's our Chief Revenue Officer, and Christian White, who's the co-founder. And I think we're going to do like an interview style, change it up a little bit, talk about where the firm's been and where we're going. So let's do it, dudes.
Right on. Thank you for the special guest hosting opportunity. Christian Hyatt, co-founder, Christian White. We refer to him as CW. So for the sake of the interview, I will call each by their nomenclature here. Let's start with just how'd you guys meet? Let's start at the very beginning. Walk me through how you two cross paths.
Cool. I guess I'll take this one since I love the origin story, and I think the story changes and gets more fake details the more times I tell it. So, so me and CW, we actually did our MBA program together at Georgia Tech, which is a great school here in the Atlanta area. And I walk into the classroom first day. I don't know anyone else doing the MBA program at all. So, but there is a guy sitting at the very front row, very straight back, that also has the name Christian on his name tag. And I figure, hey, that is a great way to break the ice, is sit next to the other guy named Christian. And then sat next to CW, and we got to chatting. And I think one of the first things I realized is CW also was in the business school to start a business. So I had hit the jackpot, and the two guys in the business school who were there to start a business, and we would later find out we're the only folks out of that MBA program that started a business, happened to sit next to each other. And so we had the opportunity to spend the next 2 years basically vetting each other, making sure that we were good business partners for each other, and thinking about the business model for risk3sixty, and end up pitching that to the class. We got to go to China together, got to become friends before we were business partners, which is a good thing. And that's my version of the origin story. I don't know if you remember it differently, CW.
No, that's about right. I think, having 2 years to hone a business plan and kind of vet a partner, I think is something in retrospect that was really important, that it was a unique opportunity. I don't know how you would do that outside of a program like that. I think also, sharing ideas while on the Great Wall of China and walking around Beijing, that was also kind of a unique experience, seeing a different perspective of the world. And so I'd say that's an accurate story.
So that's the version I've heard historically, which leaves out a lot of details that we're going to dive into a little bit more granular level here today. So was it actually that very first conversation, hi, I'm Christian, that you guys arrived at understanding both of you had goals to launch a business, or when specifically did that happen through that journey?
I think me and CW were both trying to sell each other, if I'm not mistaken. That's my read on it. Because CW was part of another startup that he was working on, and I was at a public accounting firm. I was a senior manager at a public accounting firm, but I already knew I was going to make the leap, whether it was like a independent contractor or just solopreneur or something like that. I knew I was going to do that. CW was at a startup. His startup was having, I guess, the same types of problems our clients have, thinking about their security story and what they were going to do around compliance and all of that. I was also interested in what CW was doing from a startup perspective. So, outside of just day-to-day class, we met up. I was kind of pitching him the whole, like, hey, this is why security program makes sense. I think he was pitching me, maybe, I don't know how you could be useful to us, but maybe you could be useful to the startup ecosystem we were in. So from my side, at least, I was kind of pitching CW from two ways. One, like, maybe I could do business with these guys, and two, like, CW individually, like, this is the kind of guy I could potentially do business with. And the way that he approached the whole situation, very professionally, with integrity, openness, all the stuff you want out of a business partner, just made me know, hey, look, this is the kind of guy I want to do business with, more than just, like him paying me to do some services for him, perhaps as a business partner. CW, I don't know what your side of the story is. We've never actually even talked about that, but.
Yeah, no, that's right. And then, we had opportunity to work on, projects together, different school projects. When there was opportunity to partner with somebody, we would try to team up. And I think that gave us some reps, just seeing how each other worked and communication style and all that good stuff that you would otherwise just kind of flush out on the fly. But we were able to kind of organically build that relationship without really knowing where it was headed. I think maybe until the second year, where we were like, getting more down to brass tacks, like, all right, this is going to happen. But I think that first year was a lot of just discovery.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I knew.
Please go ahead.
I'll tell. This is I'll leave off some of the details to protect the innocent. But I think me and CW knew we were going to be business partners. But kind of like when you're getting married to someone, like there's like instance where and let's just say when the chaos of China is treating you as such, and you got to have someone having your back that you trust. The way CW acted with alcohol in his bloodstream, I knew that he would be a good business partner. Just kept us up together.
I have no remembrance of this of which you speak.
So the program's 2 years, right? The MBA program is 2 years, and it sounds like, Christian, you're working what we would consider to be in the space. Christian, you're working at a startup with maybe the services being relevant, but not necessarily in security, compliance, privacy, etc. At what point and what was the, I guess, moment you arrived on, the security kind of compliance, privacy niche was one that you guys were going to launch the business in? How did that happen?
Well, from my perspective, I had one goal going into the MBA program, that was to start a business, but was fairly agnostic as to what type of business. And I was, I knew what my circle of competence was. Coming out of the military, it had to do with building great teams, managing an organization, working with people, coaching, mentoring, all those things that are important to any organization. But, my problem was, where do I focus that? What industry do I choose to start a business? And Christian sold me that, he was a subject matter expert. I could just tell right away. He didn't have to sell it to me. I perceived that, just the way he talked about things, the way that, he actually pitched a startup that I was at. I realized, wow, he really understands the space. He understands where it's going. So, when he, started talking more seriously about launching, I was like, yeah, this is obviously the space, because collectively this is where we have expertise. So he was the expert. I was not the expert, but knew how to become an expert, over time. And he coached me a lot on the stuff that I needed to be coached on.
Yeah, I would say CW was not the subject matter expert, but he's probably the catalyst that kind of made this turn into a business in the way it is today. And what I mean by that is, for me, I just wanted to go out and do security work. I wanted to do security and compliance consulting. I knew there was a market for it. I knew that I could pay the bills by doing it, no matter, like I said, if it was a solo gig or a company that was doing that. And then once we started using the MBA program and conversations beyond that to think about how this would turn into a business, using words like scalability and thinking about turning the business into an engine that can grow. That was largely CW, because, I remember when we did kind of this business canvas, was like, how big is the market, and how big could the business be? What percentage of the market could we own? I was like, dude, we could probably each make six-figure salaries. And like that, I would be happy with that, like just making a good living. And CW is like, no, man, this is $100 million business, like easy. We could do this. And he had the grand vision of scaling out this business, and got me excited about that vision too. And I was like, wait a second, you're right. We can do something like that. So while I brought in probably the understanding of the market and some of the subject matter expertise, what CW brought to the table was the vision on where we could take that, and then kind of the fuel on the fire between the two of us to think about trying to take it there.
Yeah, I think, if we had to say what were each of our respective roles, Christian's the visionary, I'm more of the integrator type. And there's a few books that talk about this type of stuff. There's the E-Myth Revisited. There's also Traction that talk about this idea of, roles and responsibilities. And when you're starting a business, you're trying to figure those out. So I think it helps to not have an ego, or to be able to set aside your ego to do what's best for the sake of the business and really be a steward of the business. And I think having that time to build the relationship ahead of time really helped us to figure out, all right, what is Christian best at? All right, let me be okay not being good at those things, and let me focus on the things that I'm good at. And between the two of us, that's how we launched.
So you guys are going to school. You're also both working full time. You got young families. I imagine the MBA program comes to a conclusion. You probably had a little bit of head steam because you've been working on building out the business plan, loosely or otherwise during those 2 years. Talk to me through the, resignation and formal launch of the business process and what that was like, and probably both from a personal and professional standpoint. Obviously, entrepreneurial, if that was easy, everybody'd be pursuing it, right? So making that leap is a big deal. I'd love to hear kind of your thought process and how you guys each arrived at that and went all in on it.
Yeah, I was scared to death personally. I'm pretty conservative by nature in terms of like risk taking. So my family situation was I was actually I had a partnership opportunity at a public accounting firm, so my opportunity cost was pretty high. So I was trying to decide if I'm going to go partner at this accounting firm or if I'm going to go give it a shot and try to be an entrepreneur, which is something that I've always wanted to do for as long as I can remember. But I also had a very young family. I had my daughter, who was, I think, 3 or 4 at the time, a new son that was on the way, mortgage, all the stuff that young families have. So giving up that great opportunity for the risk of taking no paycheck or actually paying to work, because effectively we were funding, who's going to buy the pencils and the laptops? Well, we're going to do that. So what happened was ahead of the end of the MBA program, we actually got an opportunity with a client that was basically, I think it was like $35K. It was a pretty small gig, but it was interesting enough where I was like kind of doing the math in my head. Okay, I can survive for a few months off of this. I'll bet during that time I could probably find some more work, and we'll see what happens. And talk to my wife, and I got to give my wife and family a ton of credit because everybody in my family I talked to, they were like, "Of course you should do this. You're going to be wildly successful." And it turns like I had the least amount of confidence myself. All of them were like, please do this and stop talking about it. You've been talking about starting a business forever. Just be quiet and do it. Like, I think it was a relief to them that I was finally going to give this thing a shot. So jumped ship, took that gig. And then all of a sudden we're off to the races. It turned out there's a lot of people that need security work. So we do that first gig, a second gig comes out, a third gig comes out. I think we're 2 months into it. And I call CW and I'm like, hey man, can you like quit everything and go full time? And then CW, at least from my perspective, was like, yeah, of course I will. It seemed like he wasn't ready to do it at all, which I was excited about. But that was kind of my part of the story. CW, I don't know like what fears or anxiety you had. You certainly never expressed them to me. You seemed very confident from my perspective.
Yeah. I mean, I think we had talked about it for so long and prepared, it was kind of like, well, that was the time to jump. So I had a few opportunities to practice that in a prior life in the military, like do an airborne school or ranger school, or you get to the edge and it's time to do it, So I didn't have any hesitation from a are we prepared standpoint. It was more like, are we going to do it or are we not? We talk a lot about it, but are we going to take a step forward and make a commitment, or are we going to just, keep talking about it? And I would also say, like, I give my wife a lot of credit. She was 100% on board and said, you need to do this. Again, she was tired of me talking about it, probably as well. But, she got to know Christian and Lauren a little bit and was 100% on board. So that gave me the confidence to do that. And let's see, I'm trying to remember the timeline for when we launched. I think I committed, I think it was like the week before my second son was born. So like obviously things like healthcare and all that other stuff come into account, and you're like, well, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do that? And the short answer is you figure it out.
Yep.
You take the time, you figure it out, you do research, you ask questions, and but yeah, that was the launch story.
So I've been a part of a few startups myself. I think you kind of go into it thinking like there's a very specific set of problems that we're going to come in and solve, and this is what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. But the early days are the early days, and from my experience, you hustle out every grounder you come across, right? Because you're trying to keep the lights on and build something from scratch. Can you speak a little bit to the types of engagements maybe that you were managing at that point in time, versus what we're doing today, and how much they may be different?
Yeah, we were so fortunate early on because the business model was if they'll pay us to do it, we'll do it, which makes things really simple. It's like that's in the space and universe of security, privacy, or compliance. Yes, I'd be happy to take on that gig if you'll pay me to do it. So seriously, the way we really did think about that is there's some truth to that. But we took a lot of gigs, and a lot of it was clearly under market because our fixed costs were so low. But the way we looked at it was every at bat that we get is an opportunity for us to gain clients, get a story to tell, hopefully expand into that existing clients. Actually, that first client that we ever spoke to is still a client today that we do, one of our biggest clients that we've continuously expanded into. So that turned out to be correct. So I think we took a lot of contracting gigs even. Like that's the non-glamorous part about it that people don't want to talk about often is we were like subcontractors under a few organizations. We were just doing stuff to pay the rent and then accumulating clients along the way, just trying to do really, really good work every time. Never like losing a client was never an option. Really, we can't lose a client because the acquisition costs for us seemed so expensive. So we would get a client and just land and expand over and over again, trying to do outstanding work. That largely worked. And do it. And I remember at one point me and CW said, hey, you imagine one day when we have all of our own clients, like we don't have to do any contracting gig, and like we have enough of our own clients to pay the bills. And we're like, yeah, I mean, we'll kind of know we've made it at that point. And a year in, we pretty much had that. But I do remember those types of conversations. But we didn't have the service lines that we have today, like high trust and SOC 2 and PCI and pen testing. It was really just like doing a lot of security assessment work and one-off consulting services. We hadn't productized a lot of that stuff, although we certainly had designs and visions to productize it in that way. We knew that stuff was coming. We were just trying to find at-bats and opportunities to formalize that, and a lot of patience over the course of 5 years. And I'd say CW, he kind of leads our service line development part of the business, so he was brainchild behind a lot of that.
So CW, you kind of spoke to this already in terms of the roles you each play, but I'm curious to understand, like, was this part of the arrangement coming in? Did you arrive at that naturally in terms of Christian kind of taking that traditional visionary role and CW, you kind of, owning the operations and implementation piece, or just how did that come about?
I think it evolved. I mean, at first, naturally, Christian knew the market. He could speak to it. He could execute the work. And I was feverishly studying in the background, a lot of late nights and weekends, studying, getting myself up to speed, a lot of tactical execution, and just learning. So I think, it evolved kind of organically. I would say naturally, like Christian mentioned, we did a lot of subcontract work. I mean, we're going all over the country, traveling on behalf of other organizations, doing all sorts of security assessments. And I would say during that time, we're really trying to figure out what's the right service market fit or the product market fit. And I've heard it said in the startup community that often it takes about 4 years to find that. And if you do it in 4 years, that's a good benchmark. And I think for us, it was probably 2 or 3 years when we kind of knew, all right, this is it. This is the suite of services. Let's go ahead and build it out. And we're patient, and we got one under our belt, that we said, all right, this is a service line. Let's build it out. Let's add team members. And we've kind of done that every step of the way, listening to the market. Where's the need? What's within our circle of competence, or what do we need to develop? Mm-hmm. So I'd say that's kind of how it's evolved. Just playing to our natural strengths.
Yeah. What about one thing too? I skipped this part, but this is critical because I think one thing CNW and I knew in that MBA program was that this wasn't going to be just a professional services company. We both made the commitment that software was going to be a part of this company. And that meant from day one being very disciplined about saving a lot of money. Like we didn't pocket every penny we made. We never have. We were putting a ton back into savings because we wanted to invest in software. And we knew that the gap was we're doing all these assessments in Excel spreadsheets. There's this whole universe of the GRC space that was coming to fruition. Vendor management was a problem. That was kind of what the capstone of our MBA program was this platform, not the services part of it. Consulting was something we could do to make money immediately. the software piece of it was something that we could build over time to become a competitive advantage for the firm and also help deliver our professional services firm. So at about year 2, we started building Phalanx, which is our platform, our GRC platform that we use to build security programs, to assess the security programs. Our own consultants use them in lieu of like Excel spreadsheets and stuff. But that, I think, was something that I don't think we ever even said explicitly, like, hey, we're going to be conservative in our financials because we know we have to invest back in the business in this way. We just both knew we were going to do it. We spent the whole 2 years thinking about it. So from day one, we're getting invoices and getting paid from clients, and we're squirreling a bunch back. And I don't remember us ever once even having that conversation that that's what we wanted to do. We just knew that that's what we were going to do. And then as soon as we could, we hired an engineer and built an engineering team on top of that. And I think that is unique because there was in retrospect, there's a lot of opportunity that me and CW could have not seen eye to eye on that strategy. Maybe we wanted to take home a little bit more money or something like that in any given year, but it never came up at all because we just had that shared vision and knew that we were going to do that and we were going to invest back into the firm.
Tell me a little bit about, so I think one of the things for the audience that may not be familiar with risk3sixty, definitely a focus, almost an exclusivity, if you will, on B2B SaaS, high growth technology companies being the ideal client profile. When did that kind of, I guess, reveal itself, or when did you guys discover, look, this is the perfect customer for us?
So I think that also was something around year 2, year 3. Starting out, we had a wide spectrum of customers and everything from manufacturing to food services. And then we had, some of the high growth tech companies. And we realized not only do we prefer working with the high growth tech companies, but they have a mandate to grow. They need the help. There's a shortage in the marketplace of talent that's ready to serve them. We speak their language, we understand their journey. And so we started realizing that, we're best poised to serve them because we understand them. We are them. We are a tech startup ourselves. So that kind of, I think it was in the back of our mind, but it took a while to come to the forefront to where we could actually speak to it and start marketing ourselves to that niche.
Yeah, it's weird.
Great.
Every business book says that you should be as niche as you can, but it's really scary at least early on it was to be that niche, because that means that we're consciously potentially turning down other opportunities, and we were at a stage in the company where I want any opportunity, like manufacturing company, plumber down the street, law office, anybody, I don't care. But to start putting stuff on your website that we serve high growth tech companies, to start dressing like high growth tech company clients, to start talking like them, to start leveraging the technologies that they use, to start investing in cloud security in terms of we're paying for all of our employee certifications. So we're going to pay for them and push them to go cloud directions. That stuff's scary because that's real money that you're investing. And it means saying no to other opportunities. And that feels very unnatural to say no consciously to other opportunities, but the business books say you should do that. Everybody knows you should do that. And I think we got lucky, or maybe not luck. We just thought that we knew we needed to do that. So we did it. It was a great niche for us, and it has become a great niche for us. And now I think we're winning, and this, Ryan, as our chief revenue officer, we do really well in that space. But it's just who we are. It's in our DNA. It's the technology that we use. It's how we work. I love working shoulder to shoulder with other entrepreneurs, also trying to grow their business. So it ended up being a great space for us. But it's just weird how scary that is, even though you're supposed to do it early on.
So CW, you mentioned a couple books, and Christian, you just brought up books, and I know this business has been founded on the fundamentals and best practices that have been pulled out of some very specific reads, and I think we'd probably be doing our listeners a disservice if we didn't share some of that. We've got conference rooms named after the authors. So can you speak a little bit to the specific books that you guys have modeled the foundation of risk3sixty around?
Yes. So I guess the first one I'll mention is Scaling Up by Vern Harnish. That one was really fundamental in the way that it made us think about 4 things. People, most importantly, strategy, execution, and cash. So to Christian's point, we had this vision from our MBA program to have this really software company at the time. And then we realized that our circle of competence was really focused around advisory and services. And so we started there, but we had this vision. And so how we handled cash was very important. Choosing to be bootstrapped and to reinvest back into the business and be patient and to build something great over time. It's been 5 years and a lot's happened in 5 years. We couldn't have gotten to where we are today in a year or even 18 months. It took time to evolve that over time. But that book has, I think, more than anything, helped me personally just think about those 4 key areas of business.
I remember when CW gave me that book. Now, people don't know this about CW, but he's one of he's humble as hell. So he'll never tell anybody this, but one of the most prolific business book readers that I have ever met. And I've met some good ones. So CW has de facto become my filter of business books. I really don't read anything unless he recommends it to me because he's going through them so fast. But I remember when I got the book Scaling Up, in the front cover of it was a whole page handwritten from CW, expressing some gratitude in the business partnership, also stating that this book was like, an MBA in a book, and that he felt that it was an important book of how we should be running the business. And then I read it, and there's something about reading a book like that while you're building a business, because it's so applicable and because it came from someone I respect so much, that I was like, yeah, you're right. This is the book. Like this thing, every corner I looked around, everything that we were doing, I could see in this book. And it gave us kind of a vocabulary to think about, to talk about, and to experiment with. And that tradition actually of scaling up to every employee with handwritten notes on it is something that we've done with all of our employees to date. And as long as Amazon, we can still buy the book off Amazon. At one point, we had to actually reach out to the manufacturer of the book and buy the whole stock that they had, which was like 19 books or something at the time. But that's how much we care about the book. Is we get it, we write handwritten notes in it, CW and I do, and give it to everyone. And most folks never read it, or at least they don't read it for couple years into it. But every time someone reads it, they've been with the firm for a couple years and they finally decide to crack it open reading it, they're like, man, all the stuff that you guys do, the 8:06 morning meeting, the quarterly meetings, like it's all in this book. I just thought you guys are business geniuses and invented it. It's like, no, we just stole it from the book.
So let's give some of the other authors some credit. What are some of the other books?
Sure. Well, I know Christian likes Traction. Actually, you introduced that book to me by Gino Wickman.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and I would say the Great Game of Business is another. Mm-hmm. And is it Small Giants? And Small Giants, is that right?
Yeah, that's the one that is about like starting the value of keeping a business small but great is basically the tagline of it. Yep. So just keeping yourself humble and, obviously we want to scale. We want a big, great company, but at the same time, remaining disciplined and being happy with where you're at. There's some of that in there. Gino Wickman is the guy who talks about Traction, and that's where the visionary being the CEO and the integrator being kind of like the co-CEO or the chief operating officer kind of position. That's what we think of ourselves as visionaries and integrators came from that book. And then one I want CW to talk about is Jim Collins wrote this really pamphlet. He's known for From Good to Great. That's probably his most famous book, but he wrote a pamphlet called The Flywheel. And that's another business strategy thing. And I won't steal your thunder. CW, can you talk about The Flywheel? Because you invented that to me, and that's become core to us.
Yeah. Yeah. So I really like that concept. So Jim Collins, he wrote that kind of as an output of a lot of his consulting that he does for businesses. And he realized that, there's only 5 or 6 things that really good businesses do. And all the rest, they don't really do. And by focusing on those 5 or 6 things, it allows them to be a lot more targeted and disciplined about how they approach business, how they grow. And so, great businesses like Amazon, Vanguard, they've defined their own flywheel for how they grow their business. So after reading that, we sat down and we said, all right, well, what are the 5 or 6 things that we need to do in order to, define and grow our flywheel? And so that's something that we did, and that's really proved true. Like there's really only 5 or 6 things that we focus on and invest our time and energy and money into But those are the things that have the greatest return for our clients, greatest return for our team. And so if we're investing in something, it is tied to one of those elements of the flywheel.
Yep.
So I guess I joined the firm 3.5 years into existence, right? If we're approaching 5 years, this is the fifth anniversary. So one of the two things jumped at me immediately once I got in and kind of looked under the covers. And one was the overt, I guess, investment in culture would be number one. And also I would say the investment in back office that belies our size, meaning I'm accustomed to, early growth stage companies being so top line revenue focused that, investing in, driving efficiencies and administrative tasks and things of that nature would be like, we'll worry about that, later type scenario. Can you explain a little bit to me about, was this by design? Was this a conscientious decision, or did it just seem like the right thing to do? Just a little bit about kind of the foundation that you've built a business around, if you would.
I've heard it said that, I don't remember who said this, and maybe several have, but, culture is not, the main thing. It's the only thing.
Yeah.
You have to start with that. And that kind of is something I learned also in the Army, to build great teams, it starts with culture. It starts with the interactions, the norms, the characteristics of your team. And if you can focus on that and maintain that over time, especially as you grow, that creates something special. So we have this idea of the inimitable brand. So a brand that's hard to replicate, hard to duplicate because there's something special there. Well, that goes back to culture. So that's something that Christian and I talk about a lot. It's something that we beat the drum on a lot. I think that has been a differentiator for us, for sure.
I think it might have something to do with the fact that both of us come from backgrounds of like huge amounts of camaraderie. And I know when CW, one of the reasons that we hit it off personally was just the track record of doing hard things, like CW's West Point grad, Army officer, all the natural hard things that come across that. I wrestled, I run hard races, had a hard upbringing. So it was just kind of in our DNA to do that kind of stuff. There's some pleasure in that, and just having that super tight knit team that wants to do great things together. So I know when we started the business, it was never a doubt. Like we knew that culture, like you said, was the only thing. I'd rather have a really strong culture and have 10 people in the firm than have a poisonous culture and have 10,000 people. And that has driven many of our decision points along the way, and how we invest, what we invest in, why do we do things, when do we do them. And I know that was foundational for both me and CW. So I would say it's a hybrid of a very conscientious decision making from the beginning, but also just in our DNA to want to have that great culture. Back office stuff, though, which is the second part of your question, like the fact that we actually invest in firm infrastructure and operations and that kind of thing, I'll really give CW the credit on that, because for me, I'm a cheapskate. I always want to do as much as possible with less. And CW is the visionary in terms of, hey, look, this is a great investment for the firm and it's going to set us up for a year down the line. And he's effective at making good business cases that I believe in in turn. And then we go do it. I'm like, I can't fight that logic. It makes total sense. Let's do it.
So we don't want this to, two things, I guess. One, we don't want this to look like a 45-minute infomercial, right? Two, it couldn't have been all easy, right? So talk to me a little bit about, I don't know if there were dark days. Certainly there's been challenges in getting this thing going, despite the tailwinds we may have today. Share with me a little bit about the bumps along the journey. What are some lessons that you maybe learned? This is the first business each of you have founded, for example. What would you do differently the second time around? Give me a little bit of color around that.
I'll complain
where
first.
do we want to begin with that?
I think, one thing that I guess but you can't really know until you do it, is like how all-consuming starting a business is. Just the number of hours. Like when we first started, man, I lost so much sleep, because like every time we would add a person, I would like have nightmares about not meeting payroll for that person, even though we weren't in any risk. We were fine, but it's just like it was such a amount of anxiety for me because there was so many unknowns. It was the first business, and there's no way I could have predicted the amount of mental effort that I was forced to put into this business. I say forced, but probably some of it was my own self abuse doing that. But man, it was really like psychologically and emotionally draining. I think for all the hardship, there was good stuff to compensate for that, but not to be taken lightly. If you're, I mean, I think like the whole celebrity entrepreneur thing, entrepreneurship being sexy and stuff like that is very popular right now. But what's under the covers there is like a ton of anxiety and fear and late nights and worried about missing payroll and frustration and your own inadequacies. Like I've never been a CEO before. I've never been an operations manager before. We've never done HR before. So it's just really, really hard. So for me, the darkest days were really all of that anxiety early on. And the anecdote for that turned out to be just hiring great people who can take on problems for you and that you trust. I go give you credit, Ryan, on the sales front. Like that was mostly me and CW early on doing tons of sales, which that's a big burden to carry on top of delivery and everything else. And then when you came on board and quickly gained our trust and we knew that you were going to manage that you had it, you're good. We don't have to think about it as much anymore. That was a huge burden off our shoulders. Then we have a guy named Tim who's taken over operations, and we have Jessica who's taken over vibes and HR, and service line leaders who are doing delivery. And those are all people that care about this business as much as we do, and are doing a great job, and they're managing it. And so it turns out giving away some of that control is the anecdote of all that anxiety. At least it was for me, and that continues to be a tough journey for me. Just those growing pains of relinquishing control and stop having anxiety about the business.
CW, I'd love for you to answer that question as well, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I think you just go through a lot of discovery. When you're starting out, you don't know what advisors are good advisors. What makes a good hire. You have to figure these things out, and that just takes time. So for all the home runs you hit and the singles and the doubles, you're going to strike out spectacularly at some point. And then you got to get back up, dust yourself off, and get back after it. So, learning everything from, hey, these are people to avoid. This is not a good advisor. They don't have our best interests in mind. There's another agenda that's hidden. They're not being forthright. To, hey, we hired this person. It's really not a good fit. For the sake of them and us, we should probably figure out how to help wind down that relationship. Those are really tough decisions. That's stuff that, it takes a lot of consideration, conversations to try to do right by all parties. But I think that's the stuff going into it that you don't necessarily read those type of things in business books, but that's kind of boots on the ground, tactical decision making that happens, faster than you would like sometimes. And that's where, having great people that you can go and bounce ideas off, instead of feeling like you got to bear that burden all yourself, which you do when it's just the two of you, right? But as you build the team out and you have people that are smarter than you and have better expertise in a certain area, that's where, you have to realize that you've lost span of control, and that's okay, because you've got great leaders that can step up and do and make decisions on things probably better than you can. So I think that's where I'd say over time, the stress has actually gone down for me because of that. But early on, when it's all on you, it is a burden for sure.
So let's step through the past and get into the current day risk3sixty. We're 30 some odd heads. Probably growth at the end of the year somewhere around 55 to 70%. We'll see how well we finish the year. But talk to me a little bit about just the current state of the business, the industry, and what sort of opportunities you see lying ahead for us.
I think we're very fortunate to be in the security space. Like there's a lot of things that a great market size and trajectory will compensate for, even if you don't have a strong business. And I think we do have a strong business, but we're in a great market. in terms of opportunities to go out and solve problems and serve clients and help them with the security thing, and privacy. I think we're at a weird age. Like, you can look at the headlines, all the ransomware stuff. These are existential threats for organizations. Like, it could put them out of business. So everyone's paying attention at the board level on down, and that's a relatively new phenomena. And then on top of that, we have society paying attention now because they're thinking about privacy. They're seeing all the social media headlines. They're thinking about how this is going to impact them and their future and the decisions that they make. You have regulators making decisions like out of Europe and GDPR. So it's just a crazy place to be doing business right now, and also hugely immature. So it's a great curve to live in that there's huge demand for the services, but not a ton of supply, a classic economics. And I think that we're part of that surge of organizations trying to solve those big problems. So it poises us for a huge amount of growth. So that's the market conditions. From a firm perspective, I'm very optimistic and excited about like who we have on board, young leaders that want to grow this thing out and do something important and care about it. So I'm super optimistic. What about you, CW?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, other than being in a great space, I'd say I'm excited about our team, our culture. That's the stuff that excites me and gets me up in the morning. Because I said, if I'm ever going to get out of the military, I want to go build great, high-performing teams, and that's what we have. We also now have software. We've got Phalanx GRC, which is a fantastic platform, not only for us but also for our clients. And I think that stuff we have in the pipeline to help to automate a lot of the compliance burden. To me, that's exciting because that's forward thinking. I mean, if you think what does audit look like 10 or 15 years from now? Well, it's going to suck less. It's going to be a lot better because technology will have caught up with the way that things should work. We shouldn't be bothering the engineering teams, multiple times a year to pull screenshots and configuration settings. These would be things that are solved by the industry. And that's the stuff that we're doing today. So to me, I'm very excited about the future. And like Christian said, privacy is huge. When you have people that are not in our space start asking the right questions about what's happening with their data, that's exciting because I think change is on the horizon. And
yeah, man, we're at an inflection point. Like I think as a society and as an industry, because like I think we're having this realization that all the stuff and all the investments that we've made aren't resulting in the amount of security and privacy that we would otherwise hope it would have, just because of the volume of breaches, the amount of money organizations are spending, all of that stuff. So it's probably not going to be the huge organizations that solve these problems. They're largely entrenched in the way it always has been. It's going to be these young companies, these startups like us, and frankly the clients that we serve, which is another reason it's exciting to be in the space, that are going to come up with these innovative solutions and new ways of thinking to do business to solve these problems. So you think about things like blockchain technology, machine learning, all the buzzwords, but that stuff's real and it's becoming a thing. And the way it manifests itself for us is like audit automations and thinking about like latest technologies and how we're going to use those and how we're going to do different types of assessments. And that's really fun. That's a whole lot funner than having an Excel spreadsheet and thinking about Sarbanes-Oxley and how I'm going to audit a bunch of controls, which is what you do if you're at a big firm often. So because we're at that forefront and because the market recognizes that value, I think there's a huge opportunity for upside and to serve clients in a unique and special way, which is super exciting for me.
Speaking of which, I think a lot's been said. I've read a lot about, the future of sales, and is that going to look like the pandemic moving forward, or is it going to look like pre-pandemic moving forward, like just the nature of selling and things of that nature? What about consulting, for example? Like, I know our team, I don't know that we've been on site yet. We're sitting here in late July with over a year of being in-house, for example. What does the future of consulting look like in your guys' view?
It depends. I guess I would say it depends because I think the last year has taught us that there's not much that can't be done, easily remote as on site. But there are, certain things that certifying bodies and owners of frameworks for certification reporting are going to force on-site assessments. and on-site portions. So I'd say on the pure advisory space, I think we're going to see a lot more remote. A lot of our clients have not gone back to the office yet.
Yeah.
We do have some that have gone back and are requesting, eventually to have some on-site assessment. So I'd say when there's not a forcing mechanism like a certifying body tell you to go on site, I think all parties are probably going to appreciate the option to just do remote. But when there is a requirement, then we'll still see that.
Yeah. What about what are the biggest challenges facing the success of risk3sixty moving forward in your guys' vantage point?
I remember we used to have this.
I'll answer that if you guys can't.
Yeah. I remember a conversation we had a couple years ago where, we were really trying to get new clients. Like that was the main focus. And it's always a focus. It's still a focus, but that's the thing that would kept us up at night. It was like, where are we going to get enough clients to pay the bills? And then we would joke because we knew it was true. We'd say, there's going to come a problem where clients aren't the problem. Finding people to deliver the work and to build the team out is going to be the problem. And in the back of my head, I was like, man, that's the kind of problem I want to have. That sounds a lot better than not being able to get clients. Maybe that's true. But that is the foundation of what I think all of us would agree is going to be our biggest challenge on a go-forward basis is finding the right people and putting them in the right seats and enabling them to help us grow this business alongside ourselves. We are in a state of constant and nonstop recruiting, interviewing, and hiring, which is weird when you're a 30 some odd person company because that problem is only going to get bigger. You're not going to need less heads. You're going to need more heads. And where are you going to get them? Because there's a huge shortage of security professionals, one would argue, in the space. Everyone wants top-notch security people, so we have to be innovative in how we recruit them, how we retain them, how we get them on board with the mission, how we train them. And that is suddenly one day we woke up and that was the new problem. It was delivering the work and it was getting clients, and all of a sudden we have to build this engine that can run and build the business alongside of us. So I think on a go-forward basis, that's, at least in the short term, medium term, that's definitely going to be our biggest problem.
CW?
100% agree.
I do too.
I think the inflection point we're at is we're becoming a training organization. And that means that we continue to stick to our core values. We hire for character and we train for skill. And I think that is the sound and scalable way to approach this. We just get a lot better at training. We get a lot better at onboarding people, bringing them up to speed, getting them the certifications they need to be successful, mentoring them. That's why we have a coaching program. Everybody's got a coach. That's why we have the craftsmanship program as well to develop security craftsmen. So I think in lieu of being able to just bring on experienced people in our space due to the talent shortage, we create them. So that's how we solve that problem going forward.
Yep. And it looks like we're about coming up on time, but I would like to ask one last question. You brought up those core values, and for the listeners that may not be familiar, we've got 5 of them. We've got them up on our wall in poster boards, if you will. They're grit, steadfast, freedom, team, and craftsmanship. Can you tell us a little bit about the rationale behind creating those 5 specific core values, if you would?
Well, I think core values are important to an organization, but it's not something that you can just do flippantly unless you just want core values for the sake of having them. And so for the first few years, we deliberately did not have core values because we didn't want to just pick core values. We said, let's let our culture develop. Let's figure out what we truly value. And I don't remember what year we came up with those. I want to say maybe it was around 2017, 2018, but we just sat down and said, what do we care about? Who are we as a firm? What's our identity? And those values came out of that discussion with the team. And they felt right at the time. They feel right now. And we do everything from hiring to training to investing in the Flywheel based on those core values.
Yep. Speak a little bit, Christian, if you would, to I was going to say the hiring and how we evaluate across, the GWC and then those 5 core values. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So core values are something that irritate me a little bit because it's become kind of this trope that people use to say, yeah, we have core values. They're on a wall, but they don't mean anything. And
Right.
to CW's earlier point, I think that's why we waited on developing them, because we didn't even know who we were or what the core values were. So I remember us doing a bunch of working sessions, and those evolved over time. We had some, we wrote them down, we evaluated them. It was just a fun thought exercise to think about who we wanted to be. And then once we kind of settled on some and that really resonated with us, it was like, well, how do we make this even matter? And I knew why they mattered. They mattered because if we can keep our principles as a company, then we can grow out a principled company. So we tried to embed those core values in a lot of different ways. One of the ways that we do that, to your question, is through the hiring process. So Scaling Up recommends this process is basically we measure every candidate across 8 criteria. It's GWC and core values. So GWC stands for get it, want it, capacity to do it. So we'll measure a candidate across those 3. And then we'll also measure them across their fit with our 5 core values. And then each candidate gets a numerical score, 1 to 3, and they have to get at least 16 from the people who interviewed them to be of consideration. And that's the way that we've tried to build core values into the very beginning of a relationship with a teammate, because we want to make sure that it's a fit for them and it's a fit for us. We've also gone beyond that, and that we've embedded them into some of our decision-making processes. We've embedded them into the performance review process. So when someone goes through and they do their formal performance review, there's a whole section where the employee, the coach, as well as their manager will kind of say, how do you stack up against core values? And we take that very seriously. It really prompts a great conversation. Usually our team members are much harder on themselves than everybody else, but they'll give themselves a 1 on craftsmanship, and we'll be like, no, man, you're really good. You need to know that you're like a 2 or 3. But those prompt those great conversations. It just keeps it on the forefront of our mind all the time. Why do these core values matter? What are they all about? And I like that approach. I like having core values and then having some means to bake them into the culture. And this is the first place I've ever worked where I think every team member could recite all 5 core values without looking at the wall. In other places I've worked at, it's like, do we have core values? I have no clue. Let me check the website. That's a huge differentiator for us. And that's part of that thing you can't imitate, that inimitable brand, a piece of our flywheel that CW was alluding to earlier.
Anything that I may not have asked that you want to volunteer for the audience?
Yes. So
okay.
The reason that we wanted to do this podcast, this 5-year anniversary podcast, is because we talked about what do we want out of this. We don't want it to be an infomercial. This isn't an advertisement for Risk3Sixty and why we're so great or anything like that. And what we settled on was, one, hopefully current team members listen to this, and we want y'all to be excited. We're growing this thing together, and we feel like we're growing something important, and I think the team feels like that. And this is kind of our confessional to get it out there on video. Hopefully everybody can hear what we're thinking and increase further communication. The second reason that we want to do this is because I hope that this is a tool for future hires. So if you're listening to this and you don't currently work for Risk3Sixty, this is what we're all about. This is pretty unedited, totally unedited, off the cue. I didn't even know what questions Ryan was going to ask in advance.
Right.
And this is what we're all about. And we want our existing employees and the future employees hopefully listening to this someday to be excited about being part of this thing. And if you are, reach out to vibes@risk3sixty.com, because we're always hiring. Cool. So if you guys enjoyed this, so if you don't know, this is part of a series. We do a podcast called Tuesday Morning Grind that's released every Tuesday. It's not usually me, CW, and Ryan. It's usually myself and some security experts or privacy experts just talking about the industry and talking about really interesting things and growing businesses. So if you like this kind of content, the best way to find it is go to YouTube, Google search Risk3Sixty Tuesday Morning Grind, and you can find us, and we'll have all that content. You can also look on any of the podcast apps, whether you're on Apple, Google, whatever you like, Spotify, we're on there too. You can listen in. We also have a ton of free content. So if you're looking how do I become an expert on ISO 27001? How do I become an expert on SOC 2? We literally have videos where we break down those entire frameworks and we put them on YouTube for free. just because we want to contribute to the community and help you guys out. So our only ask is please do engage, reach out on YouTube, LinkedIn, check our videos out, and let us know what you like, what you don't like, and we'll try our best to produce that content. So thank you guys for joining, and see you next time.